That, ladies and gentlemen, is a ghost bike. For those of you that don't know what a ghost bike is, that is a bicycle placed at a location where a cyclist was previously killed by a car. In that case, that bicycle represents someone who was killed here while he was in an altercation with a car. The cyclist reached his hand into the car during an altercation of some sort, and from what I understand, the car drove off with him on it and then slammed him against a pole back there, where he fell, lost consciousness, and died. Very tragic. So we see these bikes all over the city as reminders of how dangerous it is to ride your bicycle in this city. It's getting better now with the bike lanes, but it's still an ongoing battle. The gridlock, the bikes, it seems like it's a constant war, but they're trying. Sometimes there are cyclists who are obviously not very friendly. They break the rules, they jump all over the place, they go on the sidewalk, and at the same time there's cars that aren't paying attention, will open the door on a cyclist or make a right turn and cut off a cyclist. So there's a few things to, there's a few things to fix, but having these bike lanes here are a big improvement. I think they're going to make them more permanent. This is just a trial. It's just a trial to see how it goes. I mean, the best bike lanes I found were in Holland, when I was in Holland. Amazing bike lanes. Toronto took a while to get there. Toronto was very unfriendly towards cyclists for a long time. But then as the number of accidents and deaths due to cyclists dying under the wheels of trucks and cars became more and more, the city started to take action with bike lanes, and trying to create some kind of strategy, because, cycling's the way to go. But Toronto is a winter city, so when it comes December, January, February, and there's snow and ice, these bike lanes don't get used very much. Except by the diehards, like the DoorDash guys, the Uber Eats guys. They're going to be using these bike lanes even in the winter. And now they have the motorized bikes, which are even more, the motorized bikes are even more intense because they can go fast. So I'm here at Bay and Bloor. In front of me is Italy and the Manulife Center, and just north of here is Yorkville. I'm just going to walk into Yorkville and take a little walk tonight, do a little update. It's actually quite a nice evening. It's one of the nicest days in Toronto. And you got to really take advantage of them, because there's not going to be many left. We're coming into September, and things are going to get cooler. Although I love the fall. I mean, September, October is my favorite time of year, to be honest. I love the cooler weather. I love the trees and the leaves as they change color. I love the city. It's usually a time I go to New York City to visit the galleries. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it this year. My travel plans have been messed up for a while, So I'm hoping to rectify that. So here we are at Bay and Cumberland, which is one of the gateways into Yorkville. And as I've mentioned in a previous video, Yorkville is one of the more affluent neighborhoods in Toronto. Probably the most affluent as far as retail and some restaurants. It is a destination neighborhood now. In the 70s and 80s, it was a neighborhood. People did live here, worked around here, but because of the price of real estate going up, that's changed quite a lot. And people who come here now, they don't generally live here. They live outside the neighborhood, and the neighborhood is more catered to restaurants and high-end shops like Balenciaga, and Louis Vuitton, and Chanel. And there's a lot of tourism. I mean, there are some condos here. You can see some condos here. You can see the condo in front of, quite a nice one. And I imagine that many of these condos are owned by foreigners, not necessarily locals. Just the price of these condos would make it prohibitive for many locals to buy. And that's something I noticed here in Toronto quite a lot lately. I noticed that a lot of Toronto, especially in areas like this, are being more and more taken over by foreign investors who see it as just an opportunity to park their money. I mean, it's not a bad idea. Canada is a relatively safe place to park your money. They don't ask too many questions where the money comes from. So typically you have a lot of foreigners buying real estate, which is the typical way to park your money in a place like Toronto. And it's not a bad investment because the real estate eventually goes up and then they sell it and take their money out. Ooh, this is nice. I haven't seen one of these. It's an old Porsche and I love this color. This is an amazing color, champagne. I would call this color champagne. Is that your car? No? Gorgeous car. Gorgeous color. You can see it's been fixed. Yeah, so Yorkville is a place where people like this come and they show off their cars, park them, go for an ice cream, hang out, and go back home. Otherwise, there's not a lot to do here, except to go to restaurants. Even the shops here close early, like this is Chanel, and they're closing. It's not that late. And usually you find like some photographers here photographing the exotic cars, and there's not too many tonight. I mean, it's only Monday night, so I don't imagine you'll see a lot of vehicles. And there's a guy kind of walking up to us right now. I'll tell you about him in a minute. So the guy that just walked by, I've seen him around here for quite a while, and he owns a few properties in the neighborhood. He's a bit of a developer, kind of a residential real estate developer where he buys like some nice properties and then he just does them up, renos them, and then he flips them. And I think he still has a few properties, but I do see him coming into this neighborhood quite a lot just to hang out, and he's usually alone, and he usually dresses like a kind of a rock star that's past his prime. So he's definitely an interesting character. He's definitely from the neighborhood. Yeah, so it's a nice evening. I'm just gonna keep walking. Hopefully my battery won't die, and I can show you a little bit more of Yorkville. It's gone through quite a lot of changes. This hotel here in front of me never used to be here. This was like a row of townhouses that was actually some bookstores, magazine shops, small galleries, and they all just got knocked down. And now there's this hotel here. Restaurants. This cute little alley's always been here. So back in the 70s and 60s, Yorkville was a place for hippies. Yorkville was very much a hippie hangout. Joni Mitchell was a regular player. I believe there was a cafe called the Boathouse, or the something like that, the Boathouse. Maybe somebody can tell me what it was. And that's where a lot of performers like Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, all those folkies, even Neil Young would come and perform back in the 60s. And even Joni Mitchell lived right across the street from me for a while, I was told. So, you know, the neighborhood was a hippie, bohemian neighborhood. And around the 70s, late 70s, 80s, that's when the transition happened. That's when it got gentrified, and a lot of the properties were bought up, and there were like Versace and Hugo Boss stores started popping up. And as soon as that started happening, the whole area started going upscale. But it was still quite nice, even back then. Even in the 80s, I remember it was still quite nice. And it wasn't until the late 90s, early 2000s when the gentrification just went over the top, and a lot of the locals left, and, you know, it's just what happens. So now it's mostly,
that I slept better than I would have if I...
It's mostly really high-end restaurants and shops, but not a lot of local businesses, cafes and stuff like that. And there's no more cafes. Even Toronto's lost its cafe culture. That's something that's really sad, is you know, the cafe culture has died here, mostly because there's no more cheap rent. It used to be that cafes could open up in places like Yorkville or Queen Street, and without a lot of cost, they could, you know, they can operate a nice cafe and, you know, set up some couches and bookshelves. People would come together and just sit around, have a coffee, talk. And this was before the internet, before Wi-Fi, before cell phones. Things were much different. There's a whole different culture. But since social media and iPhones and mobile devices became the thing, you know, people don't read that much anymore. You know, books aren't that important. and cafes. Cafes have turned into like work zones for nomads, for digital nomads, or people who work remotely who just need a place to park. So they're not necessarily, the people aren't necessarily going to cafes to have conversations and meet other people. They're basically going there to get away from their small apartment and try to catch up on some work or do some work remotely. It's a very different thing. So that's changed.
Should we climb up the rock to sit?
Well, I'm going to just take a little walk back around, and I think I'm going to head back. It's quite a nice evening, and it's coming to an end. I'm still trying to find my next trip. I just got my residential visa, my temporary residence for Mexico. I just got that from the embassy yesterday or the other day. And I still have to go to Mexico to finalize it. So I should be heading down there within the next month or so, because they only give me 6 months to do that. So I'll be heading down to finalize that visa, which will give me 4 years of a temporary residency there. And not that I'm going to use it for the 4 years, but I just want to have the option to go there if I need to. I'm looking for places to live other than Toronto, and that's definitely an option. I have a European passport, so I can definitely live in Europe. Portugal's an option. It's the country I was born. I was born in Portugal, so it'd be an easy place to live. But there's other places I like Spain, Barcelona. I'm not sure. And then there's places like Bali in Southeast Asia that I can technically live in. You know, I don't think I'll like move permanently, but I'll definitely consider the whole digital nomad kind of scenario once. I mean, right now I'm just in the midst of selling all my things, downsizing, getting my possessions to a reasonable level where I can just put what I have left in storage and be able to move on. So that's where I'm at right now. So if I didn't mention it in the last video or one of the other videos, I did get separated last year from my wife, and we haven't finalized our divorce. We're still in the process of doing that, and that's another reason I'm still here and haven't gone anywhere. I want to finalize that, but it hasn't happened yet. You know, unfortunately. Hopefully that will be done soon. Not something I wish upon anybody, that's for sure. And if anybody's gone through that, then, you know, my sympathies. It's not a fun experience. So, yeah. Well, I'm going to take a walk up Hazelton just to give you a peek of this is one of my favorite streets, is Hazelton, which banks onto Yorkville back there. And these are some of the shops I was referring to, some of the high-end fashion stores. You know what's interesting? I look at these clothes and I think they're gorgeous. They're beautiful. I look at them, but in all honesty, I never see people wearing them here on the street. Mostly people are wearing like what you're seeing right now, which is sort of athletic wear, or very casual wear, jeans, denim, maybe a leather jacket. Yeah, there's some galleries here. This one's been around for a while. It deals in more classical art. Heffel. After living in New York for 2 years, Manhattan to be precise, I think I've become spoiled in the gallery sense. Just the abundance of galleries in New York City is just beyond comprehension. And the fantastic thing about it is the artists. They're all new artists. They're artists you've never heard about, or they're doing completely new things. So you're constantly being stimulated by new art. Whereas here, I find the majority of the art is pretty blue chip. It's art that's the art is, this is a nice piece, I actually like it. It's a very interesting mix. Feels like a, I don't know, kind of a religious thing. Something spiritual about this painting. So, as I was saying, the art here is more blue chip, more conservative, because that's what sells here. Toronto's, basically a conservative city. It's got like a liberal slant to it. It is liberal, but not in the same way San Francisco's liberal. It's sort of a kind of a crusty conservative city with some liberal undertows. And when it comes to the aesthetics and to the artwork here, to how this city is run, it's a very conservative town. I once wanted to live in here. There's a few apartments in here. That condo's pretty new. That was built over the last couple of years. Some nice properties here. My friend Helene lives in this one, 48. That's her house. Very nice place.
Is that your doggy?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, how are you doing?
So the homes on this street, believe it or not, even though they're semi-attached, they're not detached. They'll run you $5, $6, $7 million easily. And they're not very big. You're looking at maybe 2-3 bedroom homes. Some of them are a little bigger. Some of them have had like renos done. But most of them are not that big. But they're very pretty, like this one here. It's very, very well made. And as you can see, this is a semi, left and right. The cool thing here that I noticed in Toronto, what's interesting, and this is what I think it's also another thing that makes it conservative, is the fact that you could see people living in these expensive homes, literally like $7-8 million homes, and they'll have like a Volkswagen outside. And then you go to some of these low income neighborhoods in the suburbs, and you'll see like these Porsches and Mercedes in the driveways. I find that kind of fascinating. Kind of tells you just the mindset they have. It's another nice home. Yeah, it's starting to get dark. The sun's going down. I'm heading back home. Not sure what I'm going to do for the rest of the week. I'd like to make more videos, and you know, if you guys can give me some comments or suggestions as to what you want to see here, because I do need to be in Toronto for another few weeks. Hopefully not. Even if I have to go to Mexico, I'll still have to come back just because of this divorce. Maybe I can make a separate video on the divorce just to explain it for people who are curious and might want to know about it, might be going through one. Could be educational. But if you have some suggestions on videos that you might want to see on Toronto, locations, landmarks that you're curious about, I would be willing to go there and film it for you. I was thinking of going up to Yorkville Mall maybe in a day or two and do a little vlog on Yorkville. It's become a bit of a high-end mall, another affluent mall here in Toronto. Beautiful, the sun hitting that top peak. Coming up here on my right is a cafe called the 5 Elements, and this cafe was a favorite of mine before COVID. I would come here early in the morning after dropping off my daughter at school and just hang out with some friends and have coffee and talk and chat. And once COVID hit, that was it. No more get together. A lot of things have changed since COVID. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but oh, here's another. It's one of the expensive restaurants, Soto. You can see here Lamborghini parked outside. Soto. It's basically an Italian restaurant. It's very expensive. And again, it's a destination restaurant. People make reservations, they go there. I have no idea if it's any good, to be honest. But to me, it's more of a status thing. It's all status. This neighborhood is status. Here's an interesting site. I've taken pictures of this before, and I never realized that these are actually fake. They're not real. But they look great. It's very cool. So everything changed since COVID. COVID really put a wrench into things as far as social gatherings, get-togethers. It's kind of sad. And it still hasn't completely recovered. People are not as into getting together in cafes as they were before. You go to restaurants, but again, there isn't that same kind of energy of people coming together the way they used to. There is some trauma there, for sure. From what I understand, I hear rumblings about maybe possible restrictions coming into fall, winter. I hope that's not true. I mean, it's so traumatizing to go through this. Society as a whole was very traumatized by it. I'm hoping that we could avoid that. Yep. So I'm just exiting Yorkville, and right now I'm in a part of the Annex, a nice part of the Annex. And this part of the Annex, again, in the 60s and 70s, it was mostly inhabited by university professors and administrators. But again, since the 80s, when the property prices climbed really high, that eventually I don't think there is a single professor left here. It's all financial bankers and business owners now living here. The hoity-toity live here now because they're the only ones who can afford it. Some people have purchased a large home and then they will carve it up into condos and rent them out for super expensive prices just as an investment. But by and large, most homes are still intact and they're quite beautiful. It is one of the nicest areas in the city, I have to say. This home here to my right is gorgeous. '54 Bernard. Beautiful home. Something out of a painting, out of a watercolor painting. Very pretty homes. Look at these Mercedes. They're like from the 80s. You would think somebody who lives in this type of home would be having a modern Mercedes in the driveway, but nope. They're fine with the old 80s ones. That's just how they are. And I find these homes here are very well looked after. They're very well manicured. Like, look at this. It's gorgeous. Beautiful. Anyways, I think I'm going to sign off here. I'm very close to home. I just live in the next block. And yeah, stick around for the next video. And we'll carry on. Okay. Thanks for watching. Bye.